There are two tales waiting for you, told one after the other by an odd set of two. So prepare yourself, dear one, because this is Drops of Darkness.
Hello there, I'm Cameron Helkuik, and welcome to our show. Each week, we give you an original dark fiction story paired with a true paranormal experience. For today, Anodyne wrote a story named Restoration, a relatively peaceful-sounding title, but we all know better than that by now. After that, I've collected a chilling true story of having to spend the night in a barn after getting locked out, and realizing they won't be sleeping alone. As always, thank you for listening, and if you enjoy what we do, it'd be great if you could share the show, give us a follow, and maybe even leave us a review. Alright, enough of that. Stranger and someone are waiting.
I am Stranger, and I tell only fantasies. Whenever your world has a grip on your throat, I am there, waiting to unleash the monsters that sleep in my mind, so that they may remind you that you have sharp teeth and claws of your own. It's been said that artists leave a piece of their soul in their work. It's a lovely notion, to some. To others, well, you can decide for yourself after you hear the story of Lydia. At the age of 6, Lydia Wiltz declared her love of art and announced that someday she would become a real artist. As the product of artists on both sides, this came at no one's surprise and everyone's delight. It didn't matter that she still gripped her pencils and brushes in chubby little fists. Anyone she could stare at for longer than 10 seconds fell victim to her artistic whims. Their likeness appearing on brightly colored paper, half buried in scribbles. Her parents, the mailman, the gardener, and even the bank teller. But the most fun was their elderly neighbor, with his endless wrinkles and bushy brows. He was her favorite subject. So much so that upon the neighbor's sudden passing, Lydia asked if she could keep his head as a model. Yes, their daughter might be a bit strange, but artists almost always are, her parents reasoned. They were just happy that she seemed happy, so they supported her passion without hesitation. By the time Lydia was a teenager, art supplies filled her bedroom turned studio in an amount and of a quality that would make any fine art student weep, but it was never enough. Her shelves were stacked with heavy books filled with glossy, odd-smelling photos of paintings by the likes of Rembrandt, Tissot, Picasso, and Van Gogh. When she wasn't painting, she was poring over their pages, studying the eyes of each and every portrait they painted. In a good portrait, there's always something about the eyes, and each of the masters had their own way of making them look alive, like their subject was about to lean forward off the canvas and whisper their deepest, darkest secrets into her ear. But to Lydia's dismay, her portraits, they never looked like that. The eyes were flat, no secrets to be told. Some nights she looked up from the photos and stared into the mirror, trying to find those tells of life, of a soul in her own eyes. She looked back and forth between the master's great works and her reflection, but her eyes were as soulless as her paintings. One night, out of desperation, she dipped a stipple brush into Kremnitz white and dabbed the expensive paint against her dark brown irises. But instead of creating a glimmer of a soul, it just stung and turned the whites of her eyes into an angry shade of crimson. What is done out of love is done well, her parents said to console her, quoting Van Gogh himself. What is done out of love is done well. As a mantra, she repeated this to herself every time she stared at another set of eyes she'd spent the last day, week, month painting. Empty eyes. But things would soon change, she told herself. Art school wasn't cheap, but her doting parents, they could afford it. And she wasn't wrong. Under proper instruction, things did change. And quickly, away from the kind, biased eyes of her parents. It only took one class, one project, for one teacher to rename Lydia's entire passion as delusion. In front of the whole class, no less, while using her self-portrait to point out the things that a real artist would never do. The painting, like all her others, was done out of love, but apparently that did not matter. It lacked life, the teacher said. It lacked depth. It lacked soul. Leaving her canvas still grasped in her teacher's hand and her supplies scattered on her workspace, Lydia left, sure that she would never return. She was wrong. She came back. Long after the other students were gone, she came back. She'd found something in her rage as she shredded old sketchbooks back in her dorm. Sketches of her old neighbor, and she remembered why she loved drawing him so much. It wasn't his wrinkles or brows. It was the fear in his face. Each time he caught her stalking him with her pencils and paper and soulless stare. Fear that drained the life from his eyes enough that she could truly capture his likeness. All it took was the sound of the door closing and locking behind her to see the same look flash across the teacher's face, their eyes growing wide. It gave Lydia an idea. Maybe, just maybe, she could still find her own way of making her work seem alive. If she had nothing of herself to give to appease, no soul to leave behind in her work, then someone else's would have to do. So, she finished her self-portrait, retrieved from the trash, not with brushes, but old scissors, with chipped blades coated in paint. With her passion restored, 2 holes she cut in the canvas, and the eyes of the teacher pulled out, snipped, and cored, before being glued into place in their new fabric sockets, where they glimmered so bright. Hello, everyone. In between stories, we like to highlight a cause that is worth our collective attention. For May and Mental Health Awareness Month, we decided to highlight the National Alliance on Mental Illness. NAMI is dedicated to improving the lives of those affected by mental illness through advocacy, education, and support. With their programs and resources, they're breaking the stigma and providing hope to millions. You can find out more and donate at www.nami.org or from the link on our website at dropsofdarkness.com. And now, back into the shadows we go.
I am someone, and I tell only truth. Whenever something slithers through the barrier between worlds, I am there. Not to stop them, but to watch them and remind you of the countless terrors your kind has survived, all on their own. This story was submitted by D-Man1890, whose Reddit handle is listed in the episode's description. One night, on November 29th, 2022 to be exact, I was out late driving in my car when I realized I couldn't find my house keys, so I was stuck outside. My grandparents live nearby and have this old barn that we used to have horse stables in, but now has a trampoline inside it and blankets and all sorts of things. Luckily, that building is unlocked, so I decided to sleep there for the night, as I've done so in the past. I got to the barn and taped the door with duct tape from the inside completely shut, so the wind wouldn't open it. I live in the Midwest. It's windy here. There are blankets in there, so I decided to sleep in the middle of the trampoline, all wrapped up. As I'm dozing off, I hear weird scratching against the door and almost what sounded like a banging noise, which caught me off guard. Usually I take it as wind since it gets pretty intense, but the noise felt like it was coming from inside of the barn after a few seconds. I didn't hear any noise from the tape, so there definitely wasn't anything that could get inside. Then it turned into noises of faint footsteps. There's a staircase right next to where the trampoline is, and the footsteps began going up the stairs slowly. The presence I felt from this thing was so strong I could feel where it was and how tall it was, and I'd say it was roughly 6 foot, maybe taller. But it felt more like an aura more than a person, if that makes any sense. At this point, I'm shitting my pants, and something in the back of my mind is telling me to not look towards whatever it is, so I tried to remain as still as I could. The noises stopped halfway up the stairs, and now I can feel this haunting presence that I've never felt before in my life. In my mind, it looked like a shadowy figure holding something and looking down at me from the staircase. If that's not scary enough, I don't know what is. I then find it harder to breathe, and I tried convincing myself that nothing was there and that I was just imagining things. A few long minutes go by with this thing staring at me, and I'm almost ready to turn around and look at it, but it begins to shift positions as I hear creaking noises from the step that it's on. It then lifts whatever it was holding up over its head, and it doesn't leap like a normal human being, but it felt more like a direct and diagonal thrust of energy right from the stairs onto me. And when it hits me, I feel this cold sensation throughout my body that made me shiver and cringe. Shortly after that, there was only silence. No more sounds, no more feelings of anything. I felt safe. And in the morning, I felt really drowsy and out of it. Definitely one of the weirdest and unexplainable things that has ever happened to me. I've never had any other experiences with spirits or anything of that nature.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Drops of Darkness, which is written, voiced, and produced by Anodyne Vaughn and Cameron Helkuik. If you enjoyed your drift into the shadows, help keep the stories alive by sharing the show, leaving a review, and if you really want to earn the favor of these dark storytellers, tether yourself to their world by tapping subscribe. If you have a true paranormal story of your own that you'd like to be read by someone, you can make the offering to submissions@dropsofdarkness.com or through the form on our website. Until next time, dear one, and remember, when the darkness looks your way, hold its gate.